Let's think just for a moment a little bit about food. That's something that we all have in common. We eat, we like to eat, we have to eat. Food is energy for our bodies. Our bodies convert food into energy, which allows us to move our arms and move around and to think and to talk and to stay alive. It's important that we eat. We can go a few days and even a few weeks really before we will succumb to death without food. But eventually, if we do not eat, we will die. That is just plain and simple, a physical fact of the way our bodies work. We need energy, we need something to sustain us. Not only that, but we need proper balance of food. If our food diet consists simply of sugary products, that's not very healthy for us. We're going to have various diseases and probably die an earlier death than the average lifespan. So it's important to have a balanced diet, fruits and vegetables and proteins and starches and various other things that in our diet that allow our body to function properly, our cells to kind of absorb the nutrients and the energy that we need. So food is a common thing that across cultures and human beings that we have to have. But it's also different amongst cultures. What we consume in our diet could be very, very different than, say, some native tribe in Africa or some indigenous people in South America or something. You know, they would have some food products maybe that they consume that we would consider to be very foreign to us, but it works for them. But it still is, the point is, it is energy for them, for their body, in order to survive. So physically, food is essential. It has to happen. We have to consume it in order to stay alive. Food also very much is a social reality. Food brings people together. Yesterday, I had a wedding in Farley, and as most weddings couples do, after the ceremony, they host their family and friends for a reception, and they share a meal. They give them something to eat. It's a way to bring people together, for them to socialize and to celebrate together. So food as a social aspect is also very important. Funerals are the same way. After we come to the church and we pray for the deceased and with the family of those who are grieving, we then often share a meal together where we also share memories. That's a very common practice within our culture. It also kind of speaks to our history. You know, I can remember way back as a kid, family gatherings at Grandma's house on Christmas Eve or other days, there would always be certain food products that family members would bring. I had an aunt who made the best mashed potatoes. She still does. Every time she invites me over to her house, I insist that she make the mashed potatoes. Not that I'm spoiled or anything, but she always does. So, just like when I would go and visit my grandmother, she'd always have cookies in the freezer. I was like the only grandchild that liked this one particular type of cookie. It has these little orange slices in it, those orange slice candies, those jelly candies. She'd cut them up and put them in the cookies. She always had them for me. Again, not that I was spoiled or anything, but I very clearly remember that. My other grandmother, every single meal, she would serve the same dish, no matter what we were having. We had red Jell-O with sliced bananas in it. Gross. Absolutely disgusting. My mother would make me take some just to be nice, and I'd cut one of those little bananas in half. It takes that little teaspoonful, and I couldn't stand it. But I remember it very clearly. It's parts of my history, and it ties and binds me to the present day. So food, in a physical aspect, and a social aspect, is essential to who we are as human beings. It brings us together. So we can see it's not too much of a stretch of the imagination that Jesus would use, a gift that he wanted to leave as a remembrance, a lasting gift, that he would do it within the context of a meal. That's something that we can remember. That's something that we can relate to. And it's not just the aspect of kind of a dine and dash type thing. It's not like we go through a fast food window and grab something to eat and head off our way. This is about the story of our faith. We don't just come and consume something. We also hear stories of our ancestors, the readings that we heard of Moses in the desert with the Israelite people, reminding them of all that the Lord had done for them, the manna that came from heaven, and that this was a food product that their ancestors had never seen before. Reminding them of that history. We hear those stories here. Much like when we gather for family gatherings, we relate and stories about different family members, different events that have happened in the family and such. It's the very same concept. It's the one loaf and the one bread that we share, as St. Paul reminds us that we hear today as well. Think of the Last Supper from John's Gospel. Jesus didn't just share a meal with his disciples, he also gave the example of service. He got down and he washed the feet of the disciples, and he reminded them that this meal that you share, this food that you share, the gift of my body and blood, true food, true flesh, true blood, true drink, is something that you take from here. And so everything that we do, there are certain aspects of our life that we call the corporal works of mercy, where we take care of the hungry and sit with the dying and comfort the grieving and bury the dead and various things. All of those things flow from the strength and the energy that we receive in the Eucharist. To me, that's why this feast is so important. It is really the source and the summit of our spiritual life. Everything else that we do, every breath that we take, really is tied to this meal, to this gift. This is the story of our ancestors. Our ancestors gathered in this space and many other churches for a long time. And if you go back millennia, Christian Catholics have gathered and shared the Eucharist for over 2,000 years. It has sustained us as a group. Just as you need to bring your kids to family gatherings in order to make them part of the story of your family, it's important for us to share in this meal on a regular basis, to immerse ourselves in this story as well. That's important for us as we continue to grow and to develop. That's why what this feast means for me, the gift of the body and the blood of Christ, it is an enduring gift. It's the meal that Jesus left for us. It's the gift that keeps on giving in our present age.